And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to today's live stream of our podcast. Today is February 28th, 2022. This is episode 3042 of the Survival Podcast. If you're tuning in today for the first time or found this video after the live stream ended and you're joining us for the first time, do consider checking out my website. I won't even make you type in the long URL. Just go to tspc.co and you can find out about everything that we do here at the Survival Podcast. We cover a variety of topics. Today's show is going to be really honing in on current events and what's going on with Ukraine, some issues with Bitcoin, some other things, some stuff from the COVID world, things like that. Sometimes we're talking about aquaponics or gardening or seed saving or something like that. Sometimes we do a variety show and it's all kind of lighthearted topics like we did Friday last week. So it will vary. Not every show is everybody's cup of tea, but I will do my best to always do a good job for you. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to talk about Ukraine quite a bit. We're going to lead off with a documentary that I challenge you to watch. It's about 2 hours long. It's called Ukraine on Fire. I'll tell you about that and why I think you should watch it. I'm also going to tell you about some, actual investigative journalism that went on, even several years ago, like 2018, about what was going on in Ukraine and how no one seemed to care. I'm going to let you know about a new series that we're going to have here at the podcast. It'll actually be broadcast by myself and Nicole as part of our podcast. That's Nicole Sauce, of course, from Living Free in Tennessee. John, Nicole, and I will be doing a monthly fireside chat. It's going to be the first Tuesday of every month. So that would be tomorrow. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what that's about, why we're doing it. I'm going to, again, beg you, if you're holding Bitcoin or any crypto on crypto exchanges, get it off. And I'm going to tell you why. And try to reiterate that this is going to become more and more important, not your keys, not your coins. And I'll tell you about a really great response. A lot of you have heard of it already, but where the Ontario court tried to seize Bitcoin by requesting customer information from a Bitcoin company, crypto company, that basically just told the Ontario court they're a bunch of idiots. That's not how it works. It was pretty cool. So we'll talk about that. The American Freedom Convoys are rolling, but there's some things that we need to be aware of. There's already a pretty big split between what the convoys, plural, plan to do. There's at least two, and they're taking different approaches, and that's good and bad. I'm going to show you a little clip of one of the convoys rolling. The entire video is about 2 minutes long. I'm only going to show you like the end of it, because the end of it is it builds up going across the country is where you really start to see the impact of what's coming here. We'll talk about how that might affect you. We have a new Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson. I don't think she should be a Supreme Court judge. Not because she's liberal. Not because she was picked because of the color of her skin. I'll tell you why. And it's actually a real problem to put somebody on the Supreme Court that has this problem. Now, I'm non-political, but I would like us to at least pretend that we're following our own rules in this country. There's a big problem here, and it's not some weird accusation from 30 years ago or something like that. It's a real technical problem with giving somebody a seat on the highest court in the land. And it shouldn't happen from this alone. I'm also going to talk about why we may soon see a truce between Ukraine and Russia, and why that may not, big may. I give you facts, I give you opinions, and I give you maybes, which are just kind of like opinions that I'm not even sure of. This is going to be a maybe part of this one anyway. And I haven't actually had time to watch the 1 hour press release broadcast by a Ukrainian media company about this, but there are some things I get back channel from people that generally end up proving to be trustworthy. Well, says there may be something to this, and something that may be true about this and Zelensky himself, president of Ukraine, for those that have an opinion on the war but don't even know the name of the president of the country. Next up, we have a victory for liberty in COVID. I'll tell you about that. It's not close to home, but as I always say, liberty anywhere is good for liberty everywhere. Biden says you're COVID crazy and you just can't be happy because you don't understand all the good stuff he's done for you. Everybody's life is actually better now that he's president. I don't know that that's true, but his reasoning behind why people can't be happy is ironically accurate. I'll call it half right Biden for a change. And then I'm going to finish with a little bit of an inspirational message. And once we do that, as always, I'll respond to your comments and questions. If you're going to make comments or questions during this, please put them in all caps. We are on 7 different platforms today, and I've added Twitch, which is really a gaming platform, but apparently people stream on Twitch that have nothing to do with games, and some of those things get really popular, and it's another place that we can interact. And I will, if you're on Twitch, I'll actually, I think, see your comments come in the way I see them come in from Facebook. And when I'm responding to comments, I will generally do what I'm going to do right now, even though I'm not going to answer this right now. I will put the commenter up on screen so it makes sense what I am responding to. I'll star that one for later. That's why you want to use all caps. And you don't have to do like, I know some of you are on phones and like all caps, you have to, each letter, you don't have a caps lock or whatever. Okay. Do the first 2 or 3 words in all caps, and then I will know that it is for me, and I will star you, a little thing I have. And somebody's asking for our Twitch channel. You can find all of our feeds at tspclive.com. I'm Jack Spirko on Twitch. So I'm going to go ahead and unstar that one since I already answered it. Let's get into this. And I've got a lot of supporting material for you guys today. So I want to start out with a documentary. This is a full-length movie made by Oliver Stone. And Oliver Stone is, well, he's a guy that a lot of people like and a lot of people dislike. But I have never found him to be anything other than accurate, especially when he's not making a drama movie, but rather a documentary. And I found this, I watched this actually a long time ago. And it's part of why I feel like I'm actually somewhat informed about Ukraine, unlike a lot of average people. My family, for those that don't know, is also from Ukraine. We came here at the turn of the last century. So I'm actually, my grandparents were born in Ukraine and left Ukraine through Romania. And so that makes me a second-generation American. My father was a first-generation American, born to those grandparents. So there's a lot of different ways that I have some unique insight to what's going on in Ukraine. I don't claim to know everything, but I do know this, and I think this is really, really important. The same people that just lied to you for 2 years consistently, and they've been caught over and over and over and over and over and over again lying about it, okay, are now telling you we need to go to war with Russia because Ukraine is their democracy ally. And I've said this for a long time. Ukraine is a trading partner of the United States. There is some strategic interest there, not as much as the TV's telling you, but we have no alliance with Ukraine. They're not an ally. There's no, if you're going to say that we're an ally, that means we have an agreement that we have signed on to be an ally. That's what ally means. It doesn't just mean that we kind of like each other, right? You actually formalize it. Somebody gets somebody a ring. We're going steady. So if you're going to tell me that it's there's an alliance there that we have an obligation to meet, then I need you to show me where that alliance exists. I also need you to take a breath and understand that when I'm telling you what I'm about to tell you, it's not pro-Putin. Okay, I've been told I have a soft spot for Putin or whatever. All of these people that run all of these countries are doing things for their own self-interest, right? I don't like any politician. You see the shirt I'm wearing, right? Taxation is theft. I'm not pro any politician. I am pro-truth, though. And this is hard for people to accept because Putin's saying it, so it must be a lie. I'm gonna put it a different way. The media is telling you it's not true, so they're probably lying about it. There is a massive problem with neo-Nazism in Ukraine, okay? And those of you that are long-term listeners know, I told you that back before all of this color revolution and everything started. I told you this back in 08, 09, 2010. I told you about this problem. There is a long National Socialist heritage that goes all the way back to World War II, and the Ukrainians are now saying it is Putin and the Russians who have the Nazis as their spiritual guides and shit. That's the language that the Ukrainian ambassador used today. I'm sorry, this is not the case. There is, and it's not just a few people running around, some skinheads or something like that. We're talking about state-sponsored armed militias Yeah, right sector here, right from Brad Moran. That's what they're known as. That's one of the groups, the right sector. These guys are armed and they're engaged in conflict. They're engaged in attacking East Ukraine continuously. And that brings me to the next thing I want you to do today. Not only would I really like it if you would watch that documentary, and instead of telling you what's in it or telling you what conclusions to draw, I'll do something our media is not real good at. I want you to watch it and draw your own conclusions, right? Because never fear having your ignorance being cured. But I also want you, this will take you a lot less time. I want you to read this article. And I have links to everything in the audio notes. There's a link down in the video notes below. You'll be able to go over to the Survival Podcast to get links to everything that I'm providing today to you. And this article is from 2018. It's either 18 or 19. It's pre-COVID. So this is not in response to what's going on today. And it is an article where this journalist actually went to Donetsk, which is one of the regions in question here, and actually traveled around and met people and experienced things like shells coming in on top of them. Because what we're being told is, oh, those people out in East Ukraine, they're shelling their own, they're just shelling themselves. Really? But we're also being told they're not neo-Nazis. And I would just like you to consider something for me, okay? I would like you to consider something for me here. And that is the same people telling you there are no neo-Nazis in Ukraine running around as state-sponsored militias and killing people just told you that all the people in Canada that came out for the trucker strike were freaking right-wing extremist, racist neo-Nazis. Well, we had gentlemen standing up and speaking on behalf of liberty up there that were freaking Sikhs. If you don't know what a Sikh is, look it up, okay? But I don't think you're going to find a lot of neo-Nazi, white, racist Sikhs in the world. I don't think that's a thing. But they told you that's what those people were. They found one picture of some guy with a flag that wasn't near anybody else that proved it was all right-wing extremism. And don't you think they're not going to do it again? We're going to get to our trucker convoy going on in the United States right now. We're going to get to that. Don't you think, who here doesn't believe right now that when these truckers get to DC and do what they're about to do, they're not going to be labeled as Nazis and racists and extremists? So why do you trust the people who lie like that when they say it's not going on in this other place? Isn't that a bit ironic? I want to go back into this slideshow that those of you on the video can see right now versus the audio. I'll show you one thing in that article. If you'll actually do some research and get some information from people that actually went to the place, under the Minsk agreement between East and West Ukraine, there's supposed to be a ceasefire. However, if there are military engagements, there's supposed to be certain limits on weaponry, certain things that don't get used. And one is 82 millimeter mortars. So we can't be just mortaring people with 82 millimeter mortars. It's an indiscriminate weapon that does things like blows up grade schools and kindergartens. Okay? That's what it does. What you're looking at there, and again, you can go verify this article for yourself and go read. Again, this was published way before all the shit that's going on is going on right now. That man is holding an 82 millimeter mortar. I guess it didn't go off. It was a defective one. And it's attached to an RPG, basically rocket engine. So instead of dropping the mortars in tubes, what they're doing, because the RPG is that's all, kittens come out of those, right? The RPGs are still legal, but the RPGs do not have the capability that the 82 millimeter mortar does on their own. So what they're doing is they're affixing the millimeter charge RPG engines and using them in their attacks in East Ukraine. This is some stuff that's going on. Again, this doesn't mean he's a good guy and he's all full of kittens. Okay, it doesn't mean that we should back Russia. Like I said, I think what we need to do if we want to avoid escalating this further, potentially into a world war or something like that, to stay the F out of it, to let these two sides work things out, which I think is going to happen, and we'll get to that here in just a bit. But again, like I told you recently, no one's telling you this on TV. I came out and I told you guys months before this all exploded, there's a civil war going on in Ukraine. And my audience is generally more informed than the average idiot on the street. And I said, who knew that? And about 2% of you that answered in the live stream knew that that was even a thing, that that's what actually was going on. Everybody thought it was all Russia, Russia, Russia. If you watch that documentary, you'll learn some things. You'll learn that the further east you go in Ukraine, the more support there is for Russia. And the reason is because the people that live there are Russian. And the more you move to the east, you'll see that the more support there is for Ukrainian nationalism, because most of the people that live there are actual Ukrainians. One of the big myths, and we have to start. So the Apostle Paul said something to the effect of, when I was a child, I played with childish things. And now as a man, I have to put away childish things. And there's some childish things that we need to put away to have anything approaching a reasonable examination of what's going on here. And one of those childish things is the black hat, white hat mythology of our childhood. I grew up in the 1970s and 80s. Half of TV and movies were the bad guy versus the good guy. The good guy was always clearly the good guy. The bad guy was always clearly the bad guy. And sooner or later, the bad guy always lost. That's the fable of childhood. It's a beautiful story when you're a kid, except now you realize they used it to program you. So when we look at this conflict in Ukraine, the first thing that the human mind wants to do is not even wants to do, but what they want to be the case. There must be a good guy and a bad guy in a war. That is nonsensical. There's been very few wars in history where neither side took any of the blame. There's definitely some where it's real obvious who gets more. But neither side is ever innocent. So we first of all have to put away this idea that we have to have a bad guy in this. And we have to also get rid of the idea that maybe we have two bad guys. And maybe that's even more of a reason for us to stay out of it. The other fantasy that we have, and this is a total fantasy, by the way, is that nations pretty much exist now as they always have. And there's this proper place where borders belong. Ukraine is not traditionally a state as we think of a state. When I'm talking big letter S state, like the United States, it's a region that's had different components of nationalism. And there's a lot of pieces of Ukraine that are within the borders of Ukraine right now that are really not the Ukraine. Okay? Somebody decided. And our leaders in the world have played this game of chopping up and moving around borders willy-nilly for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's why the Middle East is such a mess. And you need to stop trying to think, well, like that's what they did in the Middle East. They didn't do this everywhere. No, they did this everywhere. And I'll just say now, go ahead, please, sometime this week, watch that video for me from Oliver Stone. Let's move on. I did want to include this little gem that I found today. For those that can't see it, it's a world map, and it says 4 colors on it. And the green is basically United States, Canada, Western Europe, and Australia and New Zealand. And this is a key for how it gets covered by the media. 24-hour coverage, celebrity songs, flag filters, and lit up monuments in the green zone. Then we got the yellow zone. It's South America, Mexico, the Caribbean islands, Greenland, Asia, Russia, and, like Singapore and Malaysia, Japan, right? Nobody wants to be sad all day when there's a tragedy there. Then they got basically Northern Africa and the Middle East in brown. And that says a hopeless situation, just pray. And they have like everything from the most northern part of Africa all the way down to the tip of Africa, literally do not care. And this is why some of you don't understand what those of us who are speaking out right now are trying to say. Again, we're not picking a side in a conflict where both sides are probably wrong. What we're saying is, and I'm going to sound kind of like a dick here for a minute, and some of you it doesn't apply to, and it doesn't apply to you. So I don't mind you being pissed off at me if I'm speaking to you and it applies to you. If it doesn't apply to you, don't let this anger you when you hear me say it. But so many of us have been telling you for years about the United States dropping bombs all over the world. I challenge you to go back and just from 1900 forward, Look at how many years that the United States took military action outside of our own borders from 1900 to 2022. And since the advent of the ability to actually drop bombs, say World War II forward, look how many bombs we've dropped every year on sovereign nations. I'd like you to think about the fact that we told you that we were killing Iraqi civilians in a war over weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, and you didn't care. That there's a conservative estimate of the number of Iraqis killed in Iraq by the United States and our bombs between the first and second Gulf Wars is about 500,000. These are not military casualties, but you didn't give a fuck. You didn't care. It was in the brown part of the map, and it was us doing it, so it's okay. We dropped bombs in Central Africa last week, and nobody told you, and you didn't care. And so, surely some of those bombs have killed innocent people. It's not that what you're hearing coming out of Ukraine isn't true. It's not that it's not terrifying for people who don't want any part of a war to be in the middle of a war fought by elites who gain from it. But I'm telling you, we do it more than any other country in the modern world. But it's all okay when we do it. You didn't care. You didn't give two fucks. It didn't matter to you because the TV said it was okay because we were doing it. The same people right now chanting for war with Russia, which is fucking insane. These same people convinced you at one time, you or your parents or your grandparents, depending on how old you are, that it was really important for us to take a side in the war between Iraq and Iran. How'd that work out? These are the same people that put Osama bin Laden on the CIA's payroll. That's not conspiracy talk. You can go look it up for yourself. These are the same people that lied us into that war in Iraq after we made Hussein an ally and funded his war against the Iranians for weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist. These are the same people that spilled U.S. blood and treasure for 20 years in Afghanistan and then left behind hundreds of millions of dollars worth of weaponry to the enemy that we went there to dislodge. And I could keep going. See, the thing is, all of the pearl clutching and pleading and, oh, we have to do something and look at the awful things that Russia's doing, they really, well, to many of us, they fall on deaf ears with us. We've told you about this, but this map, this shows how the average person has perceived this. And you notice all the places that aren't green on the map, well, they're all the places that we typically drop our bombs. So don't think that because somebody tells you that you don't have all the information, that means immediately they're backing the other side. Don't think that. But I want you to picture yourself, if you're going to have an opinion about something like a fucking war, like this is grown-ass adult topic here, okay? This isn't something to just mouth off stupidly about. If the only information you have is what you're told by CNN or Fox News or by our politicians here in the United States, you're basically a judge in a divorce court. And mom and dad are coming in to give you their side of the divorce. And you pick one, you listen to them, you believe everything that they say, you don't let the other side appeal to anything, and then you render your decision based on one side. That's what most of you are doing right now, including in my own community. I see it. One of the most frustrating things for me is the chicken hawkism. All the people calling for war, you're not going to sacrifice anything. At least you don't think you are. It's easy to call for people to risk their lives when you're not the one being called. And if you've never served, you've probably never really given serious thought to what that means. If you have, especially in the Army or the Marine Corps, you probably have thought about it a little bit more deeply. Because even if you served in mostly peacetime, you always knew there was a day that you could get the order and you'd be called on to kill somebody and potentially be killed. And it causes you to think a little bit more. And those of you running your mouth right now about World War III, if you never did a duck and cover drill in freaking grade school, shut the fuck up. Because you have no idea what you're talking about. This is a fucking joke compared to some of the shit that we went through in the 60s, 70s, and 80s with tensions with the USSR and the United States of America. This is not worth going to war over. Doesn't mean we won't, because we do have stupid people in power, but really relax a little bit. Next up, I wanted a quick announcement here. Most of you are familiar with Nicole Sauce. Many of you are familiar with John Willis. I'm not wearing one of his shirts today, but all my cool shirts, a lot of them come from John. He's the owner and operator of SOE Tactical Gear. He's a really great guy, very well known for like his YouTube and Instagram rants and things like that, motivating people to get their ass to work instead of complaining and bitching. And Nicole's been doing some live feed videos with him. They reached out to me and they said, would you do a once a month agreed upon, chat with us on live stream? And I said, well, can I use it on my podcast? So it knocks my podcast out for the day. And of course they were like, sure. So Nicole's going to run as a podcast. I'm going to run as a podcast. But this is something that is, that's coming soon, as in tomorrow. We will be doing our first one of these tomorrow officially. And there's a little promo for it up on the screen. Next, I want to talk to you guys that have cryptocurrency here for a minute. We're going to bounce around a bit from here on instead of just do one thing, because I think it's important that we do that. There right now is what you call an undercurrent, where everybody knows something's about to happen in the world of cryptocurrency. And everybody seems to have a feeling about this. This is, it's actually palpable. You can actually feel it in the discussions that are going on. And it has a lot to do with Canada and what I have up on the screen for you right now. And I'm hoping that's going to make the case for you as to why you need to listen to me here. But the globalists are coming for your Bitcoin. Here's the good news. They can only get it if you're stupid. If you're not stupid, they don't get it. You always hear these things, Bitcoin was hacked or Bitcoin was seized. No, accounts are hacked. Accounts are seized on exchanges. People that are stupid and they store their Bitcoin on a cloud server with Amazon Web Services, they lose out. They don't get to control their money. But they're coming, and they're going to regulate the on and off ramps between fiat and Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. They're going to do that. We all know that. The good news is, again, most of the time it won't matter. The problem is when you fall on the wrong radar and somebody decides they're going to lock your accounts, they will lock every account they can get to. And that will include a Coinbase account. That will include a Bittrex account, etc. That will include any exchange that you can be looked up and found to be a customer of. They will send them a letter and they will say, hey, lock this dude's shit and give us his records. And those companies are going to do it because they're required by law to comply. They may fight a little bit for you, but they fight a little bit when it's like Bitcoin, like Coinbase did when they asked for everybody's records for 2 years. They fought that. But if they ask for Bill Smith's freaking records, they're going to get Bill Smith's records. If they say lock up Bill Smith's shit, they're going to do it. So what happened in Canada is an Ontario court attempting to cut the protesters and truckers off from funding sent a letter to Nunchuck, which is a crypto wallet service that was used for fundraising for the truckers. And they wanted information about the people that sent it there. They wanted the funds locked up, etc. And this is the exact response that Nunchuck sent the Ontario court. Nunchuck is a self-custodial, collaborative multi-sig Bitcoin wallet. We are a software provider, not a custodial financial intermediary. The company wrote, our software is free to use. It allows people to eliminate single points of failure and store Bitcoin in the safest way possible while preserving privacy. We do not hold any keys, therefore we cannot freeze our users' assets. We cannot prevent them from being moved. We do not have the knowledge of their existence, nature, value, and location of our users' assets. This is by design. Please look up how self-custody and private keys work. When the Canadian dollar becomes worthless, we will be here to serve you too. A thinly veiled suggestion that Canada's use of financial institutions to wage war on dissent isn't likely to engender faith in the national banking system. In another tweet, the company added, speaking of which, we will add a non-email login option and make it a priority in our roadmap. So right now they're saying the only possible information they could possibly divulge about an individual would be an email address, but that email address wouldn't tell you anything about how much they have, if they have any at all, anything that they've done. They would just say this person has downloaded our software. That's all it would be able to tell you, which isn't very useful. But so now what they're saying is we're going to make sure we get rid of that too. This is why you need to hold on in a wallet of some source. I believe that a software hardware wallet combination, if the crypto you're holding is supported by them, is the best way to go. I use Trezor and Exodus. This means that to move money, then they both need to be together in the same place at the same time. So you got to have the hardware wallet and you have to have access to this. Well, actually, all you have to do is have access to the hardware wallet. But those of you that have a few $1,000 worth, you're not sitting on multi six figures of Bitcoin or whatever. You are so much better off holding your Bitcoin just in a plain old software wallet like Exodus than you are holding it on Coinbase or Strike or CoinEx or anywhere. I don't care where. If you don't hold your keys, you don't hold your coin, somebody else does. And my concern for a lot of you guys right now is that if you're holding on those exchanges and for some reason, like, I don't know, maybe you make a mistake and donate $25 to the wrong cause, you could have all your assets locked up and seized. Like, if you plan on donating any money to the U.S. domestic truckers convoy that's going on right now, you might want to think about this really, really hard. But this is one of those things now. It's like everybody knows this is coming. I do want to talk about the U.S. domestic truckers convoy next, though. So there is a group that is called, let me make sure I get their name right. I don't want to, American Freedom Convoys. No. It is the People's Convoy. The People's Convoy. There's actually multiple convoys now. And what I have on your screen is the forward facing press statement from them. And one of the things I've always said you need to have if you're going to do a protest of any kind is clear-cut, easy to understand demands. What do you want? And, 1, 2, or 3. They have about 3 here. Their lead demand, though, our core principle of freedom and liberty, gives rise to the convoy's request to end the state of emergency that led to overreaching mandates. So I've been wondering if they were going to be able to pull this off in a way that made any damn sense, because all the mandates are falling apart right now, but there's still the ability to ramp them back up here, there, and everywhere. And there's still, for instance, the healthcare workers mandate that is any healthcare service provider that accepts Medicaid has to mandate that their employees get the vaccine. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no real enforcement of that. I know healthcare workers that work for employers that take Medicaid and Medicare that do not have a vaccine, and no one's trying to make them do it. Most of those people, though, were smart, and they didn't make a big stink about it. They just shut up and went on with their job and just didn't do it. And I have multiple people that I know in that situation. I know some people that were like, well, I'm not doing it. When they asked, they said, don't worry, you already got a religious exemption. HR put it in for them because they can't afford to lose anybody else. But it's still there. That's the thing. We can, at this point, say we don't need a state of fucking emergency. So I'm encouraged by that. But you will also notice if you read this page that they specifically say they are not associated with Bomb Bolus or other convoys who are planning to go into D.C. So this convoy is the biggest one out there, and they are not planning to go into D.C. proper. Now, what they might do is surround the whole damn loop and shut everything down. But they also say they're traveling across the U.S. in peace and unity and 100% law-abiding. Blocking the highways would be breaking the law. Now, I'm not saying they should do it or not, but so I'm wondering what they have planned, because I think one of the things that you need to understand about these trucker revolts, the reason the establishment villainizes them and hates them isn't because they can shut down the Capitol or any city, because plenty of people shut down capitals and cities, a couple years ago in the summer of love when they burned shit down and your media said it was fiery, but mostly peaceful. You got a reporter standing there with somebody's freaking business ablaze behind them and saying it's mostly peaceful. It's mostly peaceful. It's for minority rights. Never mind that the building burning behind the guy was owned by a minority family who worked their entire life to build what they had, just lost everything for minority rights. But it's mostly people. So they don't care that you shut down a city. They really don't. They care that it's effective. They're afraid because it's effective. They're concerned because it works. They're concerned because it does the one thing they have spent the last 2.5 years trying to beat out of you. it makes you believe in yourself. And I want to play something for you right now. And those of you that are not on the video, this one might be worth coming and finding and having a look at. This is a video of the convoy going across the country, and it starts out rather small. It's some pickup trucks and a few trucks. This is just like the last 30 seconds of it, and it is, if it doesn't make you well up a little bit, I suggest you check your pulse. For those that are in the audio, one big line, some buses as well. And then the people watching. This is what does it for me more than the trucks themselves. Regular people, everyday people, in a footbridge across a highway that is just stacked, elbow to shoulder, arm to arm, all the way across and wrapped around the highway. People coming out in support because they believe. This is a danger for tyrants. They don't care about violent protests. Violent protests are easy to shut down. That's why they always try to turn them into violent, even if they're not. That's one of the things that you'll learn about Ukraine. If you go look at what happened there in 2013 and 2014, the provocateurs that were trained operatives came in and turned peaceful protests into riots and into bloodshed, and then blamed the police for it. That's actually what happened in Ukraine. Kind of the opposite of what happened here in the United States, right? I'm hearing that Thomas can barely hear me, so you guys let me know if it's just him or maybe it was just during the video rolling there because there's some delay. But anyway, when protesters start to actually generate popular support, especially popular support, not just in influencing opinions, but actually makes people feel like, hey, I can do things for myself. Hey, maybe we don't need them to do this anymore. They get really, really nervous. They really do. And so that's why they're so scared. Now, I do want to talk about real quick some of what we need to be worried about with this, though. Because I do think they're immediately going to, like right now, they're doing the same textbook thing as Canada. So why won't they continue? It's all Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. This is really important to you, even though for most of us, it isn't that important to us. Unless they make it important to us by doing more stupid shit. But they're acting like, this thing with the truckers isn't happening. It's just a small fringe minority. I heard that today. And it's the same day. It's like a broken record with these ass clowns. But they're going to execute the next part of the thing. Wherever they go, wherever they stop, wherever they park, wherever they rally, they're going to go in and say, these are neo-Nazis, right? That's what they're going to say, that these are white-wing racist extremists that are domestic terrorists. And I believe that in our country, more than Canada, we will have things like the FBI sending operatives, either direct FBI employees or FBI assets in to gin up hostility, to gin up violence. And the question is going to come down to, are we as disciplined as the Canadians in holding back on violence? We don't need to shut down DC with this. We don't need to completely disrupt the shipping lines. There's enough supply chain problems already anyway. What they need to be is seen and heard, and you're not going to like what I'm about to say. They do need to be attacked, not physically. We need the media to be stupid enough to continue using the white supremacist, domestic terrorist, Nazi freaking lines. They need to be called that, and we need to just show that that's not the case. This is not about an election. This is about making people actually wake the fuck up and realize that they've been lied to and to just stop complying. We don't need mandates dropped. We need what I've been calling for over a year. Compliance dropped. Don't do it. And people say, but I have to. Not if everybody stops. Not if the majority of people stop. They made a big deal when they dropped mass mandates in Texas well over a year ago. Like a year and a half plus, I guess now, right? They made a big deal out of it. Do you know why they did it? Because about half of us said, I'm not doing this anymore. We just would go in the stores like, you need to put a mask on, sir. No, thanks. I'm good. And we weren't dicks about it. We just went on about our business. We'd roll up to the cash register. Got $300 worth of shit here. I'm not going to check you out if you don't put your mask on. Really? Okay, you didn't sell this. There's your salary for the week, by the way. I'll go somewhere else. That's how it happened. Non-compliance caused it to happen. When people stopped obeying the law changed. That's not about being violent. That's nonviolent, peaceful, civil disobedience. That is something that we all need to start doing. And what they're afraid of is that these truckers are going to make people believe in themselves enough to start acting that way, not just in Florida and Texas, where they've been told it's okay to do so, but everywhere. And Art by Lee Murphy is saying Florida ditched the mask thing because most folks were blowing it off anyway. Yeah. That's why. I'm telling you, it wasn't just that DeSantis and Abbott were really great guys because they implemented controls in the first place. It was when they realized, like, this is detrimental to me to keep doing this, and I might as well ride the wind on this at this point. Next up, let's talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'm probably saying her name wrong. If I am, I apologize for that. I don't mean to disrespect anybody by saying their name wrong. But she does not need to be a Supreme Court justice. And I'm going to give you a very clear reason that this woman does not need to be a Supreme Court justice. Everybody's been losing their shit because Biden said, I'm going to appoint me a black woman to the Supreme Court, and saying that, that's really not a good way to go. And I agree. And it could be part of why we're here. I started looking to see if I could find a really highly qualified black female judge for the Supreme Court. Turned out I could. I won't say who they are, but most of them turned out to be rather conservative. And it wasn't because I agreed with their conservative stance. It was because they were highly qualified. I'll explain what that means in a minute. The reason that Judge Jackson has no business on our Supreme Court is that she has a massive history of being overturned by higher courts, including the D.C. Appeals Court, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Okay, I want to point something out that some of you maybe are not aware of. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is one of the most liberal appeals courts in the country. We should not have a justice with a track record of being overturned. I'm going to say that again. We should not have a Supreme Court justice with a track record of being overturned. We can have a Supreme Court justice that you hate the idea of having. And it's a liberal president, and he's got enough sway in the Senate to get his nominee approved. You're going to get a liberal justice. But if you're going to get a liberal justice, you should get a liberal justice that has a track record of their cases being upheld when appealed. This is a really simple thing to understand. You're putting somebody into the most powerful court in the land, the court that has the final say on issuing judicial opinions. So, I hate to bring up Kavanaugh, but one of the best things I ever heard that man say was, if you're a good justice, then you're not happy with every decision you make. If you're a good judge, you have to make decisions sometimes that you morally disagree with, but by following the law and the legal, requirements of the case, and especially when you get into things like appeals courts, Supreme Court of the United States, how does it relate to the constitutionality of the issue? Because, to quote another justice, the Constitution says what it says and doesn't say what it doesn't say. That was Scalia. And this is one of the biggest problems I've always had with the court when it moves toward the liberal wing. Conservative justices tend to do this. Conservative justices tend to, at times, issue opinions that they don't agree with, but legally they feel this is what I have to do. Liberal justices, at least in the last 20 years, have stayed far away from that, and they've been very much ideologues, which is going to happen anyway. But again, I just think if you're going to give somebody a lifetime appointment to the highest honor and the most power a judge can be given in the United States of America, they should have a history of not having their decisions overturned, especially by, we'll call it, their own side in the debate. And if you start looking up the track record of this judge. She only has one freaking opinion written at an appellate level. That's an appeals court. And that was very recently, and I'm pretty sure it was kind of propped into that to make it so she had something. But she has a really bad track record of higher courts saying, you got this wrong. And in most instances, the courts saying that she got it wrong were liberal courts saying things like in the DC decision I just had up on the screen, you overstepped your authority. You overstepped the boundaries here. You didn't have a right to even be ruling on that. When that comes from a DC Court of Appeals, I'm just going to say, like, you probably don't have a really high-level candidate for the highest court in the land. It just doesn't make sense. Next up, I want to talk about how if we do get a truce in Ukraine and Russia, there is some potential that a lot of the stuff that we heard about Biden and the Biden family might come out at a level where it can't be capped anymore, though I'm skeptical of this. What I have up on the screen for you right now is a Ukrainian news agency. They did a press conference. It was over an hour. Massive Ukraine press release exposes entire Biden crime family. I'm going to tell you, I didn't watch this yet. I watched a couple minutes of the very beginning of it, and there was nothing huge in that first couple of minutes. I didn't have time today. This was like a last-minute addition to the show. It's all in subtitles because it's done in Ukrainian, because people in other countries actually speak languages other than English. I know that's shocking to some people. But this looks pretty bombshell. But there's something else going on right now. I do have some back channel discussions with people that are in positions where they know things. They indicate that Zelensky is basically saying, you know, if we have to negotiate with Russia, there's not going to be any cover fire for Biden. That we're not going to get in the way of anything coming out. And so to make that statement, now, I would still put this under hearsay. I always try to be honest with you guys. I would put this under hearsay, but I would put it under what I would call credible hearsay. That the people I'm getting this from, you know, it's not Bill on Medium. It's not Tony on Gab. I don't reveal sources like this. That's why I have them. But I kind of feel like that maybe that's part of why we're doing a little bit more and getting a little bit more involved. Like, you know, everybody wants to say it's so Biden can protect Hunter's money. I think Hunter's money's done coming. I think Hunter's money has come, and it's, you know, how much of it he's put up his nose, I don't know. But I don't think he's still getting payments. I could be wrong about that. But there's certainly things there that could be incredibly damaging, and they're not hidden. Like, if you truly believe that the Biden's dealings in Ukraine are not corrupt and criminal, I don't know who you are, because I honest to God believe those of you who are Biden supporters, you're not Biden supporters. You're anti-Republican. And I think that this is part of the problem we have why there's no trust in institutions anymore. I think the average voter who still participates in the slave suggestion box has made a determination that all politicians are corrupt. And you just expect it. And as long as it's being used for your side, I'll kind of turn my head to it. I think there's a lot of Republicans like that, and there's a lot of Democrats like that. I don't think for 1 minute the people that are running CNN and MSNBC don't believe that you go all the way back to the Hunter Biden laptop story. I don't think for a minute they don't believe it's real. I don't think that they doubted. I don't think they actually believed it was Russian disinformation. That's just another one of those dog whistle phrases. Like anything that comes out, it's either extremist, it's racist, it's Nazi, it's Russian disinformation. Like that's the big four. That's the big counter, like with no statement of facts whatsoever. They know this. And I also wanted to play this for you. There is talks going on already. And to get to the point of peace talks in 5 days of conflict is actually rather quick historically. Let me play this for you. This is just an article being read that's on Fox News about these peace talks.
A delegation of Ukrainian officials arrived near the Pripyat River Monday on a helicopter to begin peace talks with their Russian counterparts. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who will remain in Kyiv during the peace talks, told UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson on a call Sunday that the next 24 hours will be crucial for his country, according to a Downing Street spokesperson. The talks come after Russian forces reportedly captured two small cities in southeastern Ukraine, according to Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenko. The Russian armed forces have taken control of Berdyansk and Enerhodar, Konashenko said at a press briefing Monday. Belarus is also expected to send troops into Ukraine as soon as Monday to fight alongside Russian forces, according to a senior U.S. intelligence official. Monday marks the fifth day of fighting between nations since Russia invaded Ukraine last week. Ukrainian fighters have maintained control of the capital of Kyiv. The mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, praised the patriotic residents of the city and said he is unshaken despite Russian forces trying to gain control of the city. "We show our character, our knowledge, our values," the mayor said. "To be honest, we don't have 100% control. We built this territorial defense system in a short amount of time, but these are patriotic people." Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, was bombarded with shelling from rocket launchers on Monday, reportedly resulting in dozens killed and hundreds injured. Kharkiv has just been massively shelled with Grad multiple rocket launchers. Dozens of dead and hundreds of wounded. This horror must be seen by the whole world. Death to the occupiers. Anton Geshenko, advisor to the Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, wrote on his Facebook page on Monday. Tensions flared Sunday morning when Putin raised the alert status for his nuclear forces to special regime of combat duty, threatening the fighting could escalate into a nuclear war. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield said Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation that Putin's order is an unacceptable escalation. "It means that President Putin is continuing to escalate this war in a manner that is totally unacceptable, and we have to continue to stem his actions in the strongest possible way," she said. On Monday, Zelensky asked the European Union to fast-track Ukraine for membership, citing the country's goal to be equal. "Our goal is to be with all Europeans and, most importantly, to be equal. I'm sure that's fair. I am sure we deserve it," he said in a video speech shared on social media. The number of Ukrainian refugees has meanwhile increased, with the UN's refugee agency saying more than 500,000 refugees have fled the nation to neighboring countries. The number is up from the agency's estimate on Sunday of 368,000 Ukrainians.
All right, guys, on that one, there's probably more there than you realize. One, I do think it's encouraging that we already have peace talks underway at the Belarusian border, not between Zelensky and Putin face to face. That's almost never the case, at least early on in negotiations, but between proxies. That's encouraging. And I think, as I said, you're going to get a Russian occupation in eastern Ukraine. Putin's not going to do all this and then just walk away completely. Like, they're going to say that these satellite republics, breakaway republics, separatists. Have you noticed that too in our media? They're separatists. They're separatists. And how many people are like, yeah, we got to get Putin. And then you say, are you for Texas seceding from the Union? You're like, yeah. Really? I think you need to pick one side of that scale to be on. I don't think you can have those two pit positions at the same time, right? They're separatists. They're rebel scum, right? In the words of the empire, rebel scum, right? Because they want self-determination. Would Zelensky agree to that? I'll tell you a reason that nobody will tell you as to why he might. And it's going to make a lot of sense when I explain it to you. If you take a map of Ukraine and you do what we do every 4 years and you put up an electoral map and you look at the percentages of how people vote for their two-party system, which is basically you call it whatever you want, but it's a pro-Russia party and a pro-Russia party and a pro-nationalist Ukrainian party, right? That's the two parties. East Ukraine, as soon as you cross a certain border, you'll see that it's like 60% or more vote for the pro-Russia party. Okay. And as you go further east, when you get out into the true eastern part of Ukraine, like the last third of the country, it's over 90%. If you go the other direction to the west, you get exactly the opposite. As you get toward the center of the country where this dividing line is, where you go in a division between ethnic Ukrainians and ethnic Russians. That's what you're seeing. You see it's like sway to the other side, and it's like 60%, 70% pro-Ukraine nationalist party. And as you go further west, it goes up over 90%. So if you're Zelensky and you want to keep your party in power, and you simply let go of a few of these eastern provinces, which, by the way, there's no real money coming out of. They're not where the wealth of Ukraine is. There is some mining there and all, but it's not the overall wealth of Ukraine. What have you just done? Let's put it this way. Like those of you that think it'd be a good idea for Texas to leave the Union, if you live in Texas, I think this makes a lot of sense. What would that do to the presidential electoral map? Would that be beneficial to Republicans or Democrats if Texas left? We took all of our votes with us and we went away. Do you see how that works? So if you do this and some large block of Eastern Ukraine that's traditionally going to vote for the opposition party is not voting anymore, what happens? You get national fervor, Ukraine for Ukrainians, and then you end up with this other place either being an occupied kind of limbo land, which I think is the worst case scenario. It ends up being its own small independent republic that will probably have really great relationships with Russia, or it ends up being absorbed like Crimea into the Russian Federation. And I'll tell you right now, Putin won't force it. If it goes that way, it will be put to a vote, and you will get the same outcome you got in Crimea, because all you have to do is look at past elections. Why would you force something? Why wouldn't you use the tool of democracy, in the words of Putin, if you already know you're going to win? And if you really believe in democracy, why would you oppose democracy just because you know you're going to lose? The whole thing is it's just a pile of lies on both sides, by the way. I'm sure there's less neo-Nazism in Ukraine than Putin says. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot more than MSNBC says. When two worlds go to war, neither side is innocent. I won't tell you where that's from. You have to be kind of a real nerd to know where that's from. Anyway, I think that there is some real potential here for something to be worked out. Let me bring that back down for a second. There's something else, though, that was in that again, no one will, even the people that wrote the article on Fox News won't point out. The mayor of Kiev said, we don't have complete control. Yeah, no shit, you don't. And there's something at play here that no one wants to admit. Everybody's making a big deal that Putin just didn't take everything and resistance is holding out, et cetera. And again, if you want to pick black hat, white hat, it's natural to always see your side as being victorious and what have you. And to believe propaganda like the 13 Ukrainians on the naval installation that were told to lay down their arms by the Russians. They told them to fuck off, and then the Russians murdered them. And it came out today. That was all bullshit. That never happened. Whether they said to fuck off or not, I'm not sure, but we do know they're all still alive. So that didn't happen. And the freaking chicken hawks were screaming, better to die on your feet than live on your knees, right? But they're not the ones, facing down like a freaking Russian special operations unit or something like that. So there's a lot of bullshit there. But when they say they don't have complete control, in these situations, historically, and probably more true now than in the past, the invader has the advantage. The invader can resupply. The invaded cannot. All these countries are talking about giving money to help Ukraine defend itself. What good is money if you can't buy anything with it, if you can't get anything with it? They are going to basically squeeze Ukraine in a siege-like war. And basically you can negotiate and lose something, or you can hold out and possibly lose everything. And they don't have to take Ukraine or even make the people in power in Ukraine believe that all of Ukraine will fall to do that. Because the people that run Ukraine are power-hungry bastards that our government and the NATO governments have put in place to make money with, and they don't want to lose power. So at the point that the current Ukrainian government begins to believe if we don't end this, we'll lose power, even if we don't lose the country, they have an incredible incentive to negotiate. That's not good or bad. It just is. I want to say one more thing about this, too. Everybody was on me before we started today about I was wrong that they did kick Russia out of SWIFT. And I said that they wouldn't because we need to buy their oil and gas. Well, it turns out I'm not wrong yet anyway. Several NATO powers have committed that they will remove certain Russian banks from SWIFT. So they didn't actually do it. They said we're going to do it. And certain Russian banks. So what does that mean? It means not all of them. It means, in the words of a top U.S. official, we'll still be buying Russian oil and gas because, we don't want it to be too hard on the American people. In other words, we don't want to get kicked out of office. Same thing, clinging to power. So we have forced the price of oil and gas up, and then we're using American dollars to buy oil and gas from Russia, which only makes Russia more economically strong. Again, they won't tell you any of this shit on the TV set. They'll never do it. There's a lot in that article. Go read it. Again, it is on our website, and you can look it up after the stream ends. Next up, how about some good news? New Zealand High Court ends Jacinda Ardern's vaccine mandate. It's a gross violation of human rights. So New Zealand finally found their balls. They finally did it. They finally figured out that maybe we shouldn't be letting people do this to us anymore. And I think this is a trend that is happening, throughout the world right now. That as we're seeing this facade fall down, more and more people are demanding that their governments either drop mandates or demanding that their court systems do what they should have done from the very beginning, which is uphold their own constitutions and their own rules of law. So I thought that was a good one that would make you feel a little bit better about things. I also wanted to show you something that I think you're going to find really interesting and comical. And you might knee-jerk react to it at first and say, that old dementia patient from the White House, he's wrong about everything. He's not wrong about everything here. He's not right either. But he says something here that is extremely true and worth examining. Here we go, the potato in chief.
Is a phenomenal negative psychological impact that COVID has had on the public psyche. And so you have an awful lot of people who are notwithstanding the fact that things have gotten so much better for them economically, that they are thinking, but how do you get up in the morning feeling happy? Happy that everything's all right.
All right, guys, I'm going to play that again because I'm sure that many of you were so enraged by the claim that your life was better that you missed it. I want you to listen to the other part.
Is a phenomenal negative psychological impact that COVID has had on the public psyche. And so you have an awful lot of people who are notwithstanding the fact that things have gotten so much better for them economically, that they are thinking, but how do you get up in the morning feeling happy? Happy that everything's all right.
All right. Do you get it? Do you get it? There's a profound psychological impact on our citizens from COVID that makes it difficult for them to get up and be happy, even if their life is basically good. Now, the whole idea that the average American's financial life is better now than it was before Biden took over it requires a level of mathematical dyslexia and incompetence that we won't even go into. You don't have a sustained 7 to 10% inflation per quarter and then turn around and say that people's lives are better. Inflation doesn't make lives better, especially high inflation, sustained high inflation. That's, by the way, it might be transitory, but it has failed to transitor yet. That doesn't make people's lives better, but let that go. Why is there this incredible psychological trauma to the people of the world, not just the United States? Because of what they did. Because of the policies that this jackass endorsed since the whole thing started. That when Trump was doing it, Biden's complaint wasn't, hey, Trump shouldn't be doing this. It was, he needs to do more of it faster and harder. Lock me down, Daddy. Lock me down. No, I'm not. I was never. Now his mouthpiece, Deadhead Red, comes out and says, "Oh, he was never for lockdowns." Yes, he was. He locked himself in his basement for most of his campaign and hid. Yeah. There has been tremendous. That was the most accurate thing that idiot has said since he became president of the United States. That there's tremendous psychological trauma due to COVID to the people of this country that makes it almost impossible for many of them to wake up and be happy, even if their life is generally good. Let's not say it's better, but a lot of people who are pretty miserable right now, if you look at their life, there's a lot of people in the world that would trade places with them really quick. A lot of people in Ukraine, especially Eastern Ukraine right now, would trade places with you, but you're not happy. But you know what? It isn't just COVID. How many of our young people have a view of the world, totally nihilistic view of the world, that it's not even worth it because we're all just going to die anyway? Because of 30 years of this global warming bullshit being shoved down their throat. The oceans are going to boil. We only got 10 years to act. The first time I heard that was in 1989. If you can't do math because you took new math, 1989, 10 years would have been 1999. Then we had 10 years to act. Okay, that was 2009. And now we have 12. But 2 of them are gone, according to AOC. And you can argue about it all you want, but you can't keep saying you got 10 years to act for 40 years and keep claiming that you're right. Right? What's the line by Aaron Lewis in the new song? Get what you get. You can't keep telling lies and changing your story and expect the whole world to believe. Except apparently you can, because how many people believe this? And this is the real danger of this, that it is so easy to convince the average person that it's just not worth the effort. And that is exactly how you install a tyranny over society. That's what you do. If you convince them it's not worth it, there's no chance. We're all going to die anyway. Going outside is dangerous. Showing your face to somebody is dangerous. Hugging somebody is dangerous. Going to church is dangerous. Going to school is dangerous. Just stay home and binge Netflix. It doesn't matter because the oceans are going to boil. All of this shit, it's designed to demoralize a society. Here you have one of the chief offenders of this demoralization pointing to the demoralization and saying, this is why. What he's basically saying is the reason people don't like me is because they're demoralized and they wouldn't like anybody. He's leaving out the part where, I'm a big part of why people feel that way. I've embraced every single bit of this nihilism. I've championed it all. I've brought no hope to America. I've brought no inspiration to America whatsoever. I've basically told Americans they suck for being Americans and they need to make amends to the rest of the world for being Americans. And they're not happy. I've endorsed the concept that we should lock people in their own homes who are perfectly healthy and require people to have passports to go places and travel where they have every right to travel with no paperwork whatsoever. And they're miserable, and that's why they don't like me. Like I said, he's more right than he's wrong. He's more right than he's wrong. The only thing he was wrong about in that whole thing, there's a lie of omission and a direct lie. The direct lie is that the financial lives of the average American are better today than when Joe Biden took over as president. That's a demonstrable lie. All you need to do is look at prices versus wages to understand that's a lie, because it was a specific claim. It wasn't their overall lives are better. It was they were financially better off. That's a demonstrable lie. The lie of omission, though, is, and all the shit that caused it is partially, at least hugely, my fault. That's the lie of omission there. So what do we do about all this, guys? We've done plenty of episodes where we talk about what can be done. We talk about developing parallel economies and, what if we got a network? What if we did a protest like this? What if everybody just didn't go to work, didn't do anything for a week? That might get their attention. I think all of those are fine ideas, but those all require that more than you act. This is how we deal with this shit. And I'm going to keep saying it. And I'm going to keep saying it forever. I will never stop saying this until it stops being true. And I don't think it'll ever stop being true. Not in my lifetime, anyway. You do the things that you can do and stop paying attention to and worrying about the things that you can't impact. Most of what we covered today was like looking at a weather report. Storm may or may not come. If it comes, this is what kind of storm we're going to have. Let's get ready for it. Once you got that done, then you need to focus on your circle of control, even more than your circle of influence. The reason I dissect these topics the way that I do is because I believe that critical thinking is a skill that they've done everything they can to destroy in our country, and I think it's fucking wrong. And I'm fucking fed up with it. And I'll use anything that's going on that will get your attention long enough to make you think, to help you learn to think critically, to help you realize if you can't trust a source on one thing, you can't trust a source on anything. That's a basic thing. Imagine you were married to somebody, right? And you start noticing that they're on their phone all the time. And like, if you go near them, they put it down and turn it off. Okay. And it turns out that they were sleeping around on you and that they were siphoning, and I don't care if it's the man or the woman in the marriage, right? Was siphoning money out of the bank account to the other party as well. And when you caught them, right, they completely fessed up. I said, yeah, it was going on. But they said, but it's over now and it'll never happen again. And then you find out something else looks like it happened. For instance, there was another person that they were sleeping around with a few years before that, and that they had siphoned money off to that person. And they said, oh, I didn't do that one. Would you believe them? Would you ever fully trust them ever again without at least verifying what they're saying? I submit to you that as bad as cheating on a partner in a marriage is, especially physically and financially, what your government and your mainstream media have done in the last 2 years is far more egregious. You have to be stupid, okay? Not ignorant. Ignorant would be you didn't know. Ignorant is excusable. You have to be willfully stupid to trust Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, any mainstream media source. You have to be willfully and intentionally stupid right now to trust any of the big social media outlets. You have to be willingly and intentionally stupid right now to trust your government at all. It does not mean that they won't occasionally tell you the truth. You must first doubt, then research, then confirm or dissuade, and then form your own opinion. Which, by the way, should be what you do anyway. Period. This is what we should teach people. If we're going to have school education, that should be what we teach people from once they're past how to write their letters and numbers and basic times tables, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and reading beyond C-spot run. Once we're there, everything we do in education should be, how do you know this is true? Not, hey, here's what happened. How do you know it's what happened? When we study history and they say, hey, we won this war and we were totally justified in it. Really? How do you know that? If you're afraid of the question, you must be afraid of the answer. Who the fuck's afraid of a question unless they fear the answer? Why are they censoring questions, not answers? Right now, you can end up on a watch list for asking a question the wrong way. That's scary shit, guys. They'll tell you the truth, and they'll tell you lies. And you just have to assume that everything they say is a lie. And then if you can verify that it's true, fine. Now you can act on that. But it still leaves you with, what do? You know what I'm going to do today? When I get done with this, I'm going to go out to my freaking chicken duck coop. And I'm going to shovel several yards of manure-covered straw into a pile. I'm going to shoot a quick video of just a big old pile and a cool composting system, both composting the same material. I'm going to upload it to my channel, and I'm going to make fertility for my gardens to produce well this year. And I'm going to help educate people how to do it for themselves. You know why I'm going to do that? Because I fucking can. That's why. Because I fucking can. You know what I can do about Ukraine? I can inform people of the fact there's a bigger picture than you think. And then I have to let it go. I'm going to get 100 emails today, minimum, telling me why I'm a fucking dumbass and accusing me of kissing Vladimir Putin's ass. In spite of some of you are going to go, how would you get? They'll get it. Because it's not exactly what the TV said and exactly what they want to hear. The people that turn Sean Hannity on every night will hate this podcast with a passion, and they will let me know it. And you know what I'm going to do? Delete, 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 because my show today wasn't for those people. It was for the people that have either woken up to reality or at least they're starting to wipe the sleep out of their eyes. If you can't handle something I said today, it's not because I said it. It's because you don't want it to be true. I challenge you to prove me wrong. I challenge you to go watch the documentary I led off with, Ukraine on Fire. And no, it's not propaganda for this war because it came out years before this war. And then if you listen to something and you said that can't be true, that didn't happen that way, good. God bless you on it. Go research it. Go prove or disprove it for yourself, and do that with everything. But it's probably more important if you do deep litter in your chicken coop that you do what I'm going to do today, and we're getting towards spring. Get that shit out of there. Get that compost made for spring planting season. You know the other thing I'm going to do today? I planted a bunch of seeds yesterday in my seed starting system. Did it with red solo cups. First time I've ever used that method. Large scale. And couldn't find one of my boxes of seeds. So I'm going to have my wife try to track that down. And hopefully, because that's the one that has all my cool pepper and tomato seeds in it. And I can't find it right now. And so I started everything except peppers and tomatoes, which are really important to me. So I'm going to go get that. I'm going to get that done. I'm working on a backyard aquatics course that's going to teach something that I just don't believe is being taught. I think there's lots of aquaponics courses, lots of hydroponics courses, and I think there's lots of information on how to big ponds, like 10th acre and up, or 2-acre pond management ponds. You know what I'm not seeing? I'm not seeing people that do what I do, ponds that are 300 to 5,000 gallons, and how to grow fish and food and create habitat and beauty and increase the value of your home. It's a huge ROI when you do the math on what a beautiful water garden's worth. And if you do it the smart, simple, low-cost ways you can do yourself, what it will mean if you ever go to sell your home. And yet having it so the person that doesn't want it doesn't have to, where it can just go away. Okay? You can get rid of it if you need to. That makes sense too. So I'm going to do that. That's more important, in my opinion, on Ukraine. That's more important, in my opinion, on Ukraine. It's more important than your opinion on Ukraine. We're going to need to build more ways to feed ourselves and our neighbors. We're going to need to build more systems of entrepreneurship and working with each other here. And it's great to think we should put together a network. We should put together a network. You know what makes you valuable to a network? Being a good fucking node in that network. You want to be in an entrepreneurial networking node, you better have an entrepreneurial thing that you're doing. You better have some value, or at least you better have money so you can buy shit. If you want to be part of a network and you just want to sit there like a dead node, nobody wants you. That's more important. That's what we all need to be doing right now. Again, I'll throw out, if you would like me to respond to you, please do your comment in all caps. I'm going to start going through some of the starred comments now. I got about 9 of them. We're not going to go much longer. I got to get out there and get that coop cleaned out. From Lanall, South Central region, how is your fallback land search going? So I have been looking for land. I've not found what I'm looking for. I'm not in a huge hurry for this. As I'm watching real estate in Texas, like house, subdivision, small scale farms, custom builds, all of that stuff continuously go up in price. I'm continuing to watch a slide in raw land pricing. And I think part of it is that most of the raw land in Texas is not really good conventional agricultural land. And that's where the money's going, in raw land, or it's going into development land. So a lot of the money that had been competing for straight up raw land is now going other places. And I'm watching those prices fall, and that's making me less in a hurry to act. So when I find the right place, I will definitely pick it up. Plant propagations, Putin's strategy seems terrible. Multiple fronts, spread out the forces. Your thoughts on strategy? The strategy, which I did kind of cover, is, and I think it looks like a terrible strategy. If you're thinking, I want to just take the country over, and this, I said, he's not going to invade Ukraine. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is roll through and take it all. If you don't think that Russia has the military capability to take every major city in Ukraine in a day, you don't have any idea how much military power Russia has compared to Ukraine. You know, they keep talking about we sell them javelins or whatever. That's going to get your ass tore up is what it's going to do. You can take a tank out with it. What happens when the jets come in to support the tanks, though? And you're there with this freaking shoulder-fired munition. The deal here is to, I think what he wants to do is bring Zelensky and his government to the negotiating table. And what Putin wants is a pledge of neutrality from Ukraine. Now, you can see the globalists don't like this. So that was also in the piece that I covered on the peace talks. So you notice that this idea that Ukraine should be part of NATO just kind of evaporated like a fart in the wind. Everybody is Ukraine, NATO, Ukraine should be in NATO, 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 NATO. And then like this war starts and it's like NATO's like, it's gone, right? Except for NATO went on alert for Russia, but like we're not getting involved in Ukraine. Yeah. But now what does Ukraine want? EU membership. I don't know that that's going to fly in with the Russians because it's almost the same as then joining NATO because now you have basically you're becoming a member state in the EU. It's kind of like becoming Florida if Florida wasn't a state already. It's not quite as tight as it is here in the United States, but it's a lot like that. That's an interesting little change there. Now, Ukraine has expressed interest in that before. That's a middle way. I don't know. But I think what Putin wants is he wants to occupy eastern Ukraine. He either wants it to be its own republic or become part of the Russian Federation. And he wants a buffer on his land border with Ukraine because Ukraine is a powder keg. And I think if you look at it that way, it makes a lot of sense because if he really did the blitzkrieg like they're making it like he did, like Hitler did in Poland, they would take everything like that. They really would. And again, it won't, whatever holdouts there were, it wouldn't take long. Now, I'm not talking about nobody's going to snipe you from the trees. I'm not talking about no guerrillas, no resistance. I'm talking about controlling the apparatus of government. And I found it interesting that they're making such a big deal out of it. Putin's hitting their water supply. He's hitting their bridges and their infrastructure. That's what you do in war. That's what we do in war. Again, I'm not making apologies on his behalf. But what do you think they're going to bomb? Empty fields? What do you think you bomb in a war? Well, they're attacking key infrastructure. They're attacking water plants. They're attacking communications. It's exactly what we did in Iraq. It's exactly, and we said it was surgical when we did it, but now it's a war crime when Russia does it. Make no mistake, it's a war crime. It's just a war crime when we do it too. It's amazing that another country will do the exact playbook that this country does. And then we'll say, look how evil they are. Look how good we are. Plant propagation. I read the article. Why would the Russian side fire back at the Ukrainians? Why wouldn't the Russian fire? I guess he's talking about the one where they said to fuck off, right? They had these because there was like 13 of them. And it probably didn't happen, right? Or if it did, it might have been. There is communications on the battlefield between the enemy and a superior, the two enemy sides. And when one's in a superior position, they've got the other side surrounded, and there's no one for them to go. Not everything's like the Battle of Bulge with the one response nuts and then they fight back. Sometimes it's like, are you guys sure about this? Because maybe you're not aware of how surrounded and how fucked you are. So that I don't know how that worked out, but it's turned out flat out that was a lie, and it makes me think of another lie. Another big lie. I believed it. A long time ago, I was a soldier in the United States Army Airborne. I joined the Army at 17. I didn't do it just because my home life sucked. I believed in my country. Like most people join the military do, especially if you join the Army or the Marine Corps. Right? It's not just a fucking job, right? And that whole, it's not a job, it's an adventure. Bullshit. It's a commitment. And to be 17 and willing to, and knowingly signing away a lot of your freedom and liberty, you got to believe in it. And then on my 18th birthday, August 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. And it never really was a big deal in the end. My life was never in any real risk or anything. But your mind immediately goes, hey, shit, this just got real. And I remember when there were reports that the Iraqi army went into Kuwaiti hospitals and threw little babies in the streets so that they could take the incubators, because the Iraqis didn't have enough incubators for their own hospitals. So they just threw these Kuwaiti babies, these helpless infants, in the street. And that ran on U.S. media. That ran on our mainstream media, the most trusted name in news, CNN, right? It ran there. And my blood boiled. And at that moment, when that psyop hit my brain, and I was young and stupid and I didn't know, if I had had an M60 and a line of Iraqi soldiers in front of me, unless I'd gotten taken out, I would have killed every single one of them. I would have melted the barrel off that M60. That's how infuriated I was. And it came out that it was all a lie, and that our government knew they were lying when they said it. Here's what I find interesting. At that point, when I was still indoctrinated, I was mad that I was lied to, that I was made that murderous in my mind, in my heart, and my soul. But I was less mad than I was when I first heard the lie and believed it. I should have been more enraged at my own government for doing that to me, but I wasn't. Part of why veterans tend to be the most anti-war isn't just because they've seen the horror of war. I've not really seen the true horror of war. I've been in some pretty shitty places. I've seen some pretty horrible things. But if I think back to, like, you know, what guys that served during the active hot war in Afghanistan saw, I say shit. If I compare it to my grandfather's generation of World War II and my great uncles in Korea, I didn't see shit. It's not always because they've seen war. It's often because they've been most subjected to the manipulation. So they recognize the pattern, and they know what you're being told is a fucking lie. And then they're willing to tell you that. And then they get shouted out as traitors and commies and pinkos and other shit like that. It's sad. Yesterday, they were your heroes. Today, they told you the truth, and they're worse than Hitler. But generally, it's those that have served. Call them whatever you want to. Say whatever you want. They're not going to shut up, and they're not going to stop telling you the truth just because you don't want to hear it. Ron Cole, wonder if Putin has Bitcoin. I guarantee you Vladimir Putin has Bitcoin. Jake Robinson, I know it's 2 days ago, the headline, Russians implement nuclear defenses, now changed to activate nuclear force. Like the media figured out, the first one doesn't fit the narrative of Putin. Yeah, Jake, you're dead on. Like during that article that I played being read for you, there's a whole line in there about that very thing, that, you know, Putin's escalating this to potential nuclear war. Can we examine what happened without getting all emotional like a bunch of little bitches here for just a second? So Putin launches a hot war with Ukraine. Ukraine resists. I think at that point, that's the game. Two countries are at war. It sucks. It's horrible. We've tried to tell you how horrible it is, but many of you have been chicken hawks cheering wars on for decades. But now you care that there's a war because the TV told you to. But that's what it is. It's a limited war between these two countries, and they need to settle their shit. Then NATO gets together and says, hey, Russia could come for us next, even though there's no reason to believe this. So let's unify NATO and put NATO on alert and raise the scales on our side to NATO on full alert. Let's mobilize troops. Let's put more troops in Poland. Let's start moving U.S. troops and NATO troops all around and gathering our forces surrounding Ukraine as a policy of containment. And Putin says, well, shit, maybe they're going to come for me. So he puts his nuclear forces on alert. Basically, hey, we need to be ready in case these assholes launch a strike on us. And then he is doing an unacceptable, raising of the stakes, and unacceptable. What the hell are you talking about? Like, you don't think our side was on alert before his? That's literally, we watched the timeline play out. But yeah, we got to make it. We got to make it. Yeah, we got to make it fit the narrative. Ben Yoba says Ukraine will empty out. EU is considering a 3-year work visa to all refugees from Ukraine. if this really happens, Ukrainians will take the opportunity to move and work in the EU in droves, possibly. The question is, will they still be able to vote? Because that tips the scales the other way from what I said earlier, doesn't it? If East Ukraine either joins Russia or becomes its own republic and leaves, then your West Ukrainian government has basically lifetime control of society forever, because they'll never lose, because it is that one-sided at that point. Now, it might bifurcate into something more like Democrats and Republicans. But right now, the political opposition in Ukraine is straight down the middle of the region. And it's pro-Russia and pro-nationalist Ukrainian. That's what it is. So it would do that. The other thing is, so Ukraine right now has said if you are a male, and I think it's like 16 to 60, you can't leave. So they're pointing guns at their own people, and they're letting the women and children leave. That's male privilege. And Ukrainians, as you can see, are white, right? So that's your white male privilege. You have to stay and die. You can't leave. Women and children first. That's the legacy of male privilege. Plant propagation. It was said that Hunter received money from a Moscow mayor. That's true. I think it was actually a mayor's wife, but the amount of money that he got from Russia was paled in comparison to the amount of money that came out of Ukraine. And anybody thinks that's a conspiracy theory, you're willfully stupid. You're not even ignorant at this point. All the information's there and available. You call somebody who's presented with information and sees the information and refuses to examine the information so they can cling to their belief. I think you can either say it's willfully stupid or it's willfully ignorant. Neither one of those is a compliment in any way, though. They're pretty derogatory. Somebody who's simply ignorant to something, I don't see that as necessarily a negative. It's willful ignorance that I have a problem with. There's things I'm ignorant of that I will never have knowledge of because I don't care or I don't have time, so I'll hire somebody to do it if I need it done. They're like, if you ask me exactly how does a Tesla electronic vehicle work? Unlike Kamala, I know how to charge it, right? But if you ask me, like, how do the chips relay the information to know the acceleration? I don't know, and I don't care. So I'm not going to learn, but I'm not going to but if I wanted to have a deep opinion about it, I would cure that ignorance, right? So that's just simply like ignorance of apathy. I don't care about this thing enough to know. There's some things I'll remain ignorant of because frankly, I'm not smart enough to know, right? I'm not smart enough to figure it out. So I lack motivation and I lack the academic rigor to go learn it. But when there's something I'm going to base my life on, I'm going to cure that ignorance. And I think when you are willfully ignorant and then you're spouting off, because the one thing about that article I played the narration for you guys, go look that fucking thing up and go read the comments and realize that since it's Fox News, most of those people in those comments are Republicans. And they're calling for Putin's blood. They're calling for war. It's like they can't get into a war fast enough. My comments on veterans before notwithstanding, these are people that have never seen the horrors of war. You don't look at the horrors of war and then beg for more of it unless you're a freaking sociopath. DJ says, hi, Jack, just sold our home. How would you protect $800,000 cash during these times? Bitcoin? I wouldn't put all my eggs in any basket, not even the Bitcoin one. Michael Saylor would tell you, put it all in Bitcoin and give yourself a coma and wake up in 10 years and you'll be a multi-billionaire or something like that. I don't know. I'd put some of it in Bitcoin and I would get it off the fucking exchange the second that I did. All right. I would do that really, really quickly. Since you sold your house, where are you living? I would look really hard at buying a property and paying it outright and finding my forever home if I had that kind of coin behind me. And I would tell you that holding land is one of the most secure forms of assets that you can put into asset protection. Your biggest issue ever is going to be property taxes. With that kind of money, you could probably set up a trust that at least partially paid your property taxes forever with some form of annuity and not ever run out of money. Maybe some of your Bitcoin could do that in the future. But I am not a financial advisor, and I am not going to tell somebody what to do with $800,000. I don't do that. That's not me. I don't feel that I have a right or enough insight to tell you what to do, but I would not hold $800,000 in cash in the bank right now. That I can tell you. So I can't really tell you what I would do, but I have to tell you what I wouldn't do. And with the rate of inflation right now, some of that money needs to be put into appreciating assets, whether it's Bitcoin or something else. I'd also say that Bitcoin's in a pretty good buy target zone right now. I'm very careful when I say that, though, because that doesn't mean that 6 months from now, Bitcoin won't be $31,000. It doesn't mean that. It just means that in 5 years, you won't be upset that you paid $38,000 for it today. I greatly look forward to a period of time, probably 3 to 4 years from now, reading articles about how Bitcoin crashed down to $300,000, right? It's interesting. The longer your perspective on a thing, the more clear your vision on it. I remember when Bitcoin crashed to $100. I remember when it crashed to $300. I remember when it crashed to $600. I remember when it crashed to $1,100. I remember when it crashed to $3,500. I remember when it crashed to $24,000. I remember when it crashed very recently to like $28,000. It's always crashing. It's always crashing. Christopher says that Bitcoin's at 41K right now. It was 38 and change this morning when I got out of bed. So that's cool. Could have made some money on it today, I guess. Larry says 100K on land, 300K to build a nice homestead on it. Maybe. I think you have to be, with money right now, you have to be really careful with how you spend it. 5 years ago, I was a big fan of buy a piece of land and build a house on it. Right now, if you can find a house that's structurally sound, that you can slowly make better over time, I think you're better off that way than raw land if you want to live there permanently, because it's so expensive to build. And I don't know when we're going to rein in the cost of materials. The other option, and I think we're going to see more and more of this, if this doesn't correct this economic disaster, and like I said, in the next week or two, we have got to really go into deeper, like how bad the economy of the United States actually is right now, how precarious the situation is. And if it goes over that oblivion, I think you'll actually see a lot of prices drop. But if you still can't get the materials, you see the problem. So I think one of the things you're going to see, and I think this is going to be a really good thing for permaculture, because permaculture is really good. There you go. Buy a home and a sawmill. That's where I was going. Mart Hale. That's exactly where I was going. I think about like what Ben Falk did up in Vermont. He's in the Mad River Valley. He bought a land with a lot of great timber on it. It had an existing home. He lived in the home just long enough to get the framework of what he calls his studio, which is really a beautiful timber frame home. And it wasn't done, but it was livable. And then he immediately started renting out the house, and the rental on the house paid the entire mortgage on the property. And I think a lot of people think because Ben's well-known in permaculture, he makes a ton of money on permaculture. And I think he's done better and better over the years. But at the time he built his homestead, he wasn't making much money. You don't make that much money running 2 PDCs a year, guys. It looks like a lot of money to you when you're paying to go, but by the time you feed everybody and take care of everybody and teach everybody and bring in assistant instructors and all, you're lucky if you make 10 grand. That's not horrible money for 2 weeks worth work. I can make more than that doing a lot of run-of-the-mill jobs, though. And if you only do 2 of those years, 20 grand a year, it's not a lot to live on. But what he did is he brought in sawmills and used the existing infrastructure, the existing timber. And as he cleared the land that he actually wanted to farm, he used that specific timber to build his home. And when I was there years ago, it was done. And he still had a huge pile of milled lumber sitting there for other projects to do. And I think that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to be doing, is moving in on things like this. Lily Farms Food says sawmill truck loader Mini X. Yeah. By the way, Ben had a Mini X. It's how he kept all his neighbors happy. So they had a private road, and when we did these big workshops, you'd have all these students coming in. It was no big deal, but you know how people are. I mean, all those people are coming in and out. They're going to mess our road up. We have to pay to maintain that road. He's like, I got a Mini X. I'll do all the maintenance. It wasn't that big a road. It was a couple hundred yards. He's like, I'll do all the maintenance every year. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll take care of it. And everybody just shut up and went back to living their lives, I think that's actually probably another thing that we need to do a show on pretty soon. And I'm going to wrap up here because we're at an hour and 40 minutes. We need to do a show on exactly that. How do we pick the right piece of land to develop into a self-sustainable, whether it's on-grid or off-grid homestead, for the least amount of money possible out of pocket? So how, if you build a timber frame home from rough sawn lumber on your property, odds are that it's going to be a home you could never afford to buy the materials to build. Just some thoughts. Thank you to all of you guys who are out there today with us. I hope you guys that tuned in on Twitch enjoyed it. I'm going to have to figure out, like, does the video get saved and whatever, but I think it's a good platform. I was able to interact with some of you guys on there. Again, we're on multiple platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Twitter, we're on Float, we're on Odyssey, and we're on Rumble. You can consume the content anywhere you want to. You can also get with us on the audio side. We get a pretty good turnout for video, but I am new to video. I've only been doing it about 6 months like this. My show's been around for 14 years. As of June, it'll be 14 years. And we get about 200,000 audio downloads plus on any given episode within 48 hours after it goes out. So if you're new here, check us out, learn more, subscribe to us on the podcast services. If you can't always make the live feeds, check out the website, thesurvivalpodcast.com. Consider doing your shopping at tspaz.com, where you get all my reviews and you can help support the show, and consider becoming a member of the MSB. And with that, I will catch up with you guys tomorrow with Nicole